A big shout out to all our fans for joining us here today. Now, be prepared because we're about to take you on a journey to the center of the internet marketing universe, right here on the Internet Marketing Show with your host, Ed Brown.
Hello, folks. Thank you for joining us here today. We are pleased to be discussing a topic that is very important to anybody who's operating a business online or an entrepreneur who may be trying to create an income online, something that everyone needs to take seriously. This is cybersecurity, computer forensics, and we'll be discussing the new policies that are coming into place and into effect in 2014. So our featured guest today is an expert, a business leader, an innovator. He's sometimes referred to as the sheriff of the internet. He is a leading security and information analyst at Jurnov. Our guest here today is Eric Vanderburg. Hello, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Ed. Glad to be on the program.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you today, and a very good topic today, and something that we really feel is going to provide a lot of value for our viewers and everyone in the internet space. So we're interested and excited to talk about this topic. So before we get it started, do you have a little inspirational quote you could share with our viewers?
Well, there are so many of them. Actually, I end up posting one every couple of days on my Twitter. But one that always kind of, I guess, inspires me a bit, and especially when I think of incident response, is one from Napoleon. All right? He's a great general. He said, the key to victory is concise planning followed by rapid response. And what I like about that is that you do a lot of planning up front. That really helps, and because when a problem comes up, like a data breach or some security incident, you need that rapid response. Without the plan, the rapid response is usually way more difficult, or it's rapid response like a lot of people running all over the place, bumping heads into one another, not knowing what to do. So that's why I like that quote. Key to victory is a concise plan followed by rapid response.
All right, excellent. That makes perfect sense, and that really is a great quote to share with our viewers today. So a solid plan in any aspect of your business is certainly important, and in the event that we experience something that's out of the norm, we have a game plan and we're able to implement the system that we've devised, and that's something that we really believe will help moving forward. So if we could hear a little bit about yourself, Eric, and if you could share with us how you came into the computer forensics and cybersecurity world, and a little bit about what you do as a business, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Well, I guess I've been in the space for about 15 years now. Started working in IT, and gradually just developed out of the IT industry this interest in information security and figuring out how attackers operated and how to protect against that. And I joined Jurnov about 7 years ago. And prior to that, I had been teaching at a local university and or a local college, I should say. And since joining Jurnov, I've been responsible for our information security, e-discovery, computer forensics, and litigation support business lines. And what's probably most important to our conversation today is that computer forensics and information security or cybersecurity business lines, security certainly is getting a lot of the news today. And in that, we offer services like a virtual CSO. So for companies that are small and can't afford to have a full-time chief security officer, someone who can respond to all of those compliance concerns, security concerns, and really help drive an organizational strategy focused not only on achieving the business goals but also on the security goals. That's one service we offer. We also do audits and penetration testing. That's where we tend to be like an attacker, and we actually either come in from the outside or pretend to be an inside user and see what kind of data we can obtain from the organization. Even to the point of social engineering. I don't know if you've heard of that term before, but so the social engineer is basically like an online con artist, where they could go physically into your facility and try to pretend to be someone to get your data and information. So we guard against that as well.
Okay, thank you. So those are a lot of complex problems that we face as a business owner, and we know that as a business owner, the most important thing for us to do is operate our own business and provide a wonderful customer experience for our own clients. And cybersecurity, computer forensics, the legal aspects are all things that may be a little bit overwhelming to our viewers. So you've listed off some of the services. Could you briefly just list off what types of services that you are able to provide, and what benefits a small business owner may receive from having a company such as yours assist them with these computer threats?
Sure. Well, first off would probably be our gap analysis, and this is where we will look at a number of different key areas in information security, things like access controls and your governance, which would be your policies and procedures that are in place, the awareness of your employees or just of you if you're a one-man show, and then some of the technology that you have in place. And we try to identify the easiest things to implement that will give you the best bang for your buck. We rank about 25 different indicators as low, medium, or high, and how difficult it is to implement it, what the cost is, and what the risk is for each of those elements. It gives you a great overview on where you're at in your organization, and helps you figure out where you're at on the security maturity model. It says, are you more of a responder? Something comes in, you're fighting a fire, or are you proactive? Do you have plans and policies that are in place that work for you, or are you still developing those? Or maybe you're all the way at the other side of the spectrum and you're really an information security leader.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, in the recent months, we've seen a lot of attacks on sites in different services, such as WordPress is a common type of a service that's used for a lot of internet marketing businesses or a lot of small business owners. When you're setting up cybersecurity or setting up your security systems, do you actually back up a client's site or provide services that will prevent their sites from being hacked or attacked, and information, either their site shut down or information and data pulled from their sites?
That's a good question. And I'll say we help a client identify what they will need, but we don't provide the IT services. So we wouldn't do like the website hosting for them, but we could tell them, here's a deficiency here. Let's say this is a critical website that needs to be up. They may need to develop a secondary site or have another site that could be brought up very quickly in case that main site goes down. Maybe they suffer from denial of service attacks, and there can be things that we put in place to help with that. Or it could be something as simple as looking at that WordPress site and helping them find some other themes that they need to install, not themes, plugins that they need to install to be a little bit more secure, or choosing the right type of hosting provider. Because we've also found that these breaches, they either happen from a business that you're working with, a partner organization, an insider, or they're coming from that external threat. And it's kind of a third for each of those. So those businesses you're working with, like the provider of your website or WordPress itself, if one of them has a problem, then your data could be at risk because of it. So that's why choosing the right one is important.
Okay, and just to explain to the business owner who may not have an understanding, what type of a problem could they face if they actually have customer data on their website or information, or just in general, if your site is attacked and people gain access, what could that, what type of effect could that have on your business?
Well, there are quite a variety of different things. First off, if you have customer information, you should make a concerted effort to determine whether you really need to keep that information. A lot of businesses are keeping information they don't really need, and then you have the burden of protecting that information. So first, look and see if there's any information you can get rid of. Now, if you do have information on these systems that needs to be there, you need to determine whether there are any regulations that govern that type of information. So if it's health information, you're looking at HIPAA. If it's credit card information, PCI, things like that. And that's going to specify what kinds of controls are going to need to be in place at a minimum to help protect that information. Now, if it's not any of those, then there are still some controls you should put in place, but there's not a governing body that's specifying exactly what you need to do. But there are some well-known standards. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, they put out a lot of different documents that will help you put together the right controls. You can also talk to the provider. If you're hosting this with another site, you could see what kind of controls they've put in place and if they adhere to some of these standards. Now, I think there was another part of your question, though, that I didn't answer.
Okay. Well, let's move to this point right here. Now, as a small business owner, people may, be limited with budgets. So now, in comparison, what type of services could a small business owner get with a small budget? And in comparison, what type of expenses could they see or liability if somebody was to attack their system, whether it's their website or their internal computer database from inside their company, and actually retrieve information that they have stored in there? What's the sort of the difference between the expense that they may incur to protect their system or the liability they may have if their system's attacked?
Well, that's a good question. So let's say that data is compromised, and what happens is we would call it a breach. So some personal information is taken from the system and is released out into the wild or is stolen. Now, if that's the case, then you need to determine exactly what information was taken and who's impacted. And then, depending on the type of information, you may need to purchase credit monitoring for those people. You have to send out notifications, which of course damages your brand and your customer goodwill. And then there's the cost of the investigation to determine exactly what that scope was. And that can be tens of thousands of dollars. Now, we say on the other side of it, how much does it cost to secure that data, and what would be the most cost-effective method? Well, if you're a small business, you may not have the funds to employ a full-time security officer, and that's where things like a virtual or a fractional chief security officer can come into play. Just like how you outsource your IT, you can outsource your information security function, bring in somebody who's highly credentialed, or even a team of individuals to then help you plan that out, create a good strategy, and then comply with these other regulations. And that's actually a service that we do offer, the virtual CSO.
Okay, now we're going to talk about something that is, taking a major change here in 2014. We're seeing a big move to have policies in place and legal information in place on websites, and this is something that all business owners need to have moving into 2014. Could you share a little bit of information about, what needs to be on your site in general, and what penalties they could face for not having this in place?
Sure. Well, first off would be the privacy policy, stating what kind of information you're going to retain from customers and how you're going to protect that information. Will you sell it to third parties? How will you be storing it? When will you destroy it? Things like that. Second would be your incident response plan. If a breach happens, how are you planning on responding to that? And third would be some form of risk assessment. This is a document that says we've looked at the system, we've looked at the risks that face our company, and here are the decisions we made and the rationale behind it. We decided to implement this control because of this reason, or we decided that we're not going to perform this action because of this reason. And then after a breach, that would be a critical document that would come into play. Why were these controls not implemented, or why were they implemented? They just want to see that there was a good faith effort put forward before the fact.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we've discussed, some topics on the cybersecurity side, some legal issues. Is there anything else in regards to cybersecurity that you believe a small business owner, questions they may have that they would want answered in regards to cybersecurity?
Well, there really are a lot of them. I would encourage you that if you do have some more specific questions, you can certainly send them to me via Twitter or Google Talk. We can have an online conversation about that. But I hear a lot of questions about cloud services. Are they appropriate? Can I trust them? And for each one, you're going to have to evaluate it, see who the provider is. There are some great resources out there, and we could certainly link to some things. But sites that will rank different providers like Amazon's cloud services or Google's and so forth. And so you got to do your research. Certainly, you can call in an expert to help you make sense of all of it. There's a lot of information out there, and it can get technical.
Okay, talking about cloud services, are people experiencing as many cyber threats through cloud services as they are through their own websites or their own internal databases? And if you could touch between the three, between the cloud services, the websites, and the internal databases, where businesses will find that the most common threats are?
Mm-hmm. Well, it is kind of there'll be pros and cons on both sides. So let's just say you're the company that decides to host it all in-house. Now you're responsible for securing all of that data. So let's say you're doing it on the cheap. You just have a guy who stops in every once in a while. He's implemented things as best as he can, but there might be some gaps in his knowledge base or her knowledge base, and so that data may be a little bit more vulnerable. Now, let's say you go with the cloud service. Well, here you have a team of individuals. They've designed a solution that's supposed to be more secure and all that. However, they may be hosting this data for 1,000 different customers. Now, if you're an attacker on the outside and you're trying to look at targets, if they target your single company and that one server, it may be easier to get in, but they're getting a very limited amount of data. It may be worth their effort to go after the big fish, the cloud service provider, because now they get data from thousands of customers. So there's some pros and cons to both sides.
Right, thank you very much. That's a lot of insight into cybersecurity and some questions that people may have and some solutions to those. And we can always reach out to different services. Jurnov provides services for small business clients, corporate clients, and they're able to answer some questions and provide solutions if it's a right fit for your business and their business. And now, moving into the next topic, computer forensics, I believe this would probably involve people who are more companies on a corporate level, or a larger small business owner, small to mid-sized business owners. What type of computer forensic services are typically required for a business, or how do they affect the small business owner?
Well, so when you have an incident, I guess one of our first questions is this something are you trying to prosecute the individual who committed this crime, let's say, or are you just trying to get the facts and make a decision here, shore up the holes, and not have it happen again? And we have people who kind of decide to do both. But if you really want to use the evidence gathered in court, you have to go about it through a forensic manner. And this is a very structured approach where evidence is taken and it's protected so that the integrity can be validated within the court system. So everything from taking pictures of equipment before it's handled, documenting serial numbers. As you can imagine, there's a lot of things that go into that. Now, what kinds of cases would involve it? Well, let's say that you're running a marketing site and one of your employees takes your customer list, goes somewhere else, and is now using that customer list. This is actually quite a common occurrence. You may need to sue that person, tell them to stop doing that type of business, and maybe they violate that, some agreements by taking that data. And we would then gather the computers that were used, do an analysis on it, determine if that data was in fact taken by this other individual, and then provide you with all that evidence in court so that you could sue them.
Right, very good. Now, are there other aspects of computer forensics that are used maybe prior to the breach? So you mentioned before auditing. Is there parts of the process that a business can proactively use to protect their business, or something that they may want to do with audits on a routine basis just to assure that their systems are up to date?
Well, sure. Yeah, that falls more on the information security side, being proactive on it. The gap analysis I mentioned earlier is a good approach. Also, the penetration testing, that's where we will actually act like an attacker and attempt to penetrate, so breach the website, and we will document all the steps taken and then improvement actions so that you can avoid that. There are different types. There's the black box, which means we come in without any information about your company at all, except for maybe a name, and do all the research, figure out what kinds of devices you have, and then penetrate, just like an attacker from the outside would. Then there are other attempts where we have some information on the inside, and we attempt to exploit the system using that. And then everything from there's the inside attack. We act like an authorized user. What could that user do, and what kinds of controls might you need to put in place to restrict somebody who, you've been trusted up until that point when they commit a crime. And I'll tell you, there's even the people you think you trust the most, they run into some financial difficulties, or there's some other external problem, and now taking some of that data home doesn't seem like such a bad thing.
Okay, and what do we typically see, or what would you say would be the most common breach of security? Are these things that are attackers from the outside, or is it more common that data is breached internally from the inside, through employees or users within your system?
It's more common that it's the internal employee. Now, this could be both malicious, so the example I gave earlier, the person who leaves for another company and takes some company information with them, or it could be accidental. Those who received that phishing email and now they provide their username and password, or they're giving out personal health information in a way they're not supposed to, and it's an accidental. Or even I attempt to send a sensitive document to you, and I start typing in Ed, and it goes to a different Ed entirely.
Okay, and in the could you explain some of the results, as if internally your data is taken, or if the information is sent to the wrong individual, such as you just had suggested, emails sent to the wrong web address, what type of problems could a business see once either data is retrieved from the individual or the wrong information is sent to the wrong individual?
Well, sometimes it can be as simple as just contacting the person you accidentally sent the message to and saying, whoops, my mistake, could you please delete that and make sure it's purged from your system? However, if I accidentally sent over health information, I can't just call the person up and say that. I still would, but I have to now report it because it's been a true breach.
Okay, and under that example, if valuable information, credit card information or health information, has been sent to the wrong direction, what does that entail for a business? Is that a costly endeavor? Is there a process that needs to take place at that point?
Well, they would need to go through a risk assessment, which is a determination of what kind of risk is placed on the person whose information was exposed. Do we need to notify them? Do we need to go any further to help protect them from the exploitation of this information? And that would probably involve the investigation of an outside party. So it can be quite expensive. And usually employees who even make a mistake like that, there's usually a policy that's already been set in place and sanctions. So it's not simply, oh, whoops, you made a mistake. There's usually some consequence.
All right. Now, the next question is, for a small business owner with a limited budget, what are the most important things that they could implement into their business? Whether we're talking about the cybersecurity side, we're talking about the plan to have some type of computer forensics, even if it's just a number to dial in place, and also when it comes to audits of their system and protecting their system from being hacked, both internally and externally, what would be the most important things that a business owner would want to implement in their business if they were to contact a service such as Journo?
Yeah, if the first thing is just what you mentioned, to reach out to somebody who's a professional in this area, like Juranov, and then they know who to contact in case there's a problem, and beforehand we can work out things like that incident response plan and help shore up any of the vulnerabilities that they have right away. And things like, how complex is your password? I know everybody hates hearing about that, but we still talk about it. Having a complex password, changing it often, that's a very common thing. Recognizing what kinds of emails are phishing emails, what kinds of information you would want to discard or reply to. And that can help prevent a lot right there.
Okay, so as a business owner, if they were to contact Juranov and they were to discuss these points with you, and then they were to educate themselves as a business owner, is it important for them to then go back to meet with the employees within their business and create a culture within their business where there's an awareness of what needs to happen in order to avoid these things from happening as a company? Would that assist the company by educating the employees?
Yes, actually you hit on one of my favorite terms, culture. So it isn't just about you implement a few things and then, hey, we're good, let's not look at this ever again. The technology is always changing, the attacks are changing, the techniques are changing. So you put some things in place, but you're going to have to revisit that. And as you said, the culture, right? You have to educate the employees, but also show them through a series of successes that information security is something that can really benefit them, and that it doesn't have to make it more difficult to do their job. It can be in line with it. And as a culture is developed, it won't happen overnight, but as that culture is developed, you'll find that employees are, rather than resisting the change, they're actually seeking out new ways to help protect themselves and the company.
Okay. Now, when creating this culture, when educating the employees of a business, if you're taking the time to speak to the company and you're delivering this message, if you are delivering the message that you are currently working and have a relationship with a company such as Juranov, where cybersecurity, computer forensics, and audits are routine things that take place, and that these are available to your company through the services that are being provided, and this is part of what's being discussed as a culture, would this maybe ward off individuals who may have the thought of actually trying to breach that data, knowing that maybe Juranov or some type of computer forensic company is watching them, that there's somebody out there that will catch them?
Yes, it will. In the awareness, actually, one thing we work on is helping everybody in the organization to be responsible for information security. So this goes to the fact of knowing what other people in the organization are doing and reporting that to the appropriate persons. And so when an incident happens, you don't find out about it 6 months later. You find out about it right away, because Mary, who's in the cubicle next to Bob, who just did something, she notices it, and now we're able to deal with the problem right away. And so as you're educated on that, Bob knows, oh boy, everybody's looking over my shoulder. They're going to know. They're not just going to look the other way or not know what's going on. And so, yeah, they're certainly going to have to hide their tracks a lot more. Also, sometimes you get the IT person who thinks, oh, they know it all, and after you start going through some of the potential attacks and some of the things that they need to do to secure the systems, they realize, oh yeah, there's a lot I don't know, and I certainly don't want to attempt that thing I might have.
All right, great. Now, as a company, then what we can gain from the discussion that we've just had here is that just simply hiring a company such as Juranov to consult with them, to receive information that we're able to then look at our business, and we're doing an analysis of our business, and we make a plan moving forward for the next steps that we'd like to take to implement when that budget is available, and then going back to the company and delivering that message and creating that culture and educating will provide the sense that you have these things in place, and this will in one way prevent attacks from your internal employees into your database, because you actually are bringing this to the table and you're letting employees know that you do have a team such as Jurnoff in place. So something just as simple as consulting with you and educating the employees can be the first step that they would take.
Exactly. Yeah, you summarized that very well.
All right, very good. So we've discussed many different topics here over the course of the cyber forensics, or the cyber security, the computer forensics, the audits, consultations, you know, the employee culture, educating the company, putting the thought out there that there are people watching, that the system is in fact secure, that there is a team in place to watch for breaches, and protecting the company internally. All are things that we've discussed, and these are things that you can find solutions for at Jurnoff. You can have questions answered and consult with them to develop a best business plan for your company. Would there be anything else, Eric, that you may want to share? Maybe some things that we haven't touched on that anybody may have, just a common question or something that I may have missed?
Sure. You'll hear a lot about patch management. Is applying latest Windows updates and all of that. I'm certainly encouraging everyone to keep their systems up to date, both their virus definitions and their computers. But technology itself, it changes rapidly, and there's a lot of new things that come out. But it's not always best to adopt that latest, greatest thing, because there can be vulnerabilities within that new software. There could be a longer training curve, a learning curve, longer implementation time, and a higher cost to implement all of that technology. And sometimes it's best to actually wait a little bit. As long as your systems are still up to date, it's working fine, you don't have any major problems that this new software would solve, it's better to stay with something that's mature and something that is where the security model is understood, rather than something that's new and untested.
All right, very good. So we see that across so many different platforms, from updates with simple plugins, updates to your WordPress installations, updates to computer systems, updates to anything that you're using, whether they're technical gadgets, systems, or softwares. So you have to find that fine balance between when it's time to update and not moving too quickly into a system. And so I would guess that you would not suggest any business enter into a beta program to try and take advantage of the newest and the latest and the greatest, or maybe save some money by getting in on a beta program that involves anything that may potentially breach their system.
Yeah, that's correct. Not for anything production. Actually, one of my own little horror stories is something like that, where I had worked with a company. They had a new product they were developing, and this was a big name company. And we partnered with them to test the hardware and software, and then they gave it to us at a tenth of the cost others would pay. The only problem is the technology was new, and it really wasn't the direction the market ended up taking. And so they didn't sell very many of these units. We ended up being one of very few companies that actually had them, difficult to get support, and we ended up retiring that unit quicker than we really wanted to, in order to use some of the mainstream and better supported applications and hardware.
All right, very good. Now we've discussed many topics here. I know that there's probably a lot of questions that people have. So once again, we really recommend that you consult with a company such as Jurnoff or one in your local area, that you would be able to have these questions answered. Be sure what's going on within your business, whether it's internally, whether it's your websites, the software programs, anything that can be breached, anything that may be needed to have the tools in place or the people in place to implement the solution. So be proactive and know where you're going to go before it happens, and have that relationship with the company, so that when that day comes, you have a relationship established, and you're not put on the back burner when you're having a meltdown within your own business. Anything else that you may want to share with our viewers before we move into the next round, where we'll just be asking some questions in general about some tips and techniques that you can offer for our viewers?
Sure. Well, one thing I'd say is if it's important, back it up. A lot of companies, you find that there's important data, you haven't been backing it up, you lose it, and suddenly you have to try to figure out how to put all that data back together again. Back it up, and then test that backup to make sure that you can really restore it and that you know the process. Another thing would be if you have mobile devices, don't root those devices, or jailbreak them. You may introduce some vulnerabilities and make yourself insecure.
All right. Backups. I'm sure that there have been many experiences where people have shed tears or had major breakdowns and meltdowns within their business and personal lives when a computer, we know that things just simply dropping a computer, knocking over a external hard drive, a flood within a building where all the computer systems and IT systems are damaged, and everything that your company had, or some of the most important aspects of your personal or business information, is gone in a flash. And this is all something that can be avoided by backing things up. And could you possibly suggest how people would go about backing up different systems?
Sure. I'm sure you can just think about the pain of losing the data right now. You think of at home if you lost your pictures, or at work if you lost your payroll data or something. Certainly you need that backed up. And some of the methods, depending on what kind of solution you have in place, might be to replicate to another site. If you have a website, you may have another site that you replicate to that can be brought up in case that site goes down. It could be that USB hard drive that's connected to a machine, you're copying off to that, and then you bring that hard drive off-site. Safety deposit boxes are really not that expensive, and you can store hard drives or tapes or whatever else in those safety deposit boxes at your local bank. There's also the traditional tape storage, or you can have another backup server that would store copies of the data on your local network.
All right, thank you, Eric. And most importantly, when backing up data is very important, and we always want to back up our data off-site. So simply backing up your data and having 2 external hard drives sitting on your desk, or having your data backed up on 2 servers within your own business is not the best solution, because if there's a fire, if there's a flood, if something happens in that business, if there's vandalism, damage, the backup needs to be off-site in a different location, so that if that happens, you still have access to your files, and that one event can't destroy your original and your backup at the same time. So always keep that in mind, and that wouldn't always be with just computer information, but anything that you're trying to back up or save. So Eric, we would love to move into the next round here, where we're going to ask you some questions. And the first question is in regards to failures, and as business owners and entrepreneurs and people who work in the world of technology, we all face failures. And so is there a failure, a challenge, an obstacle that you have faced that you've had to overcome within your business and career?
Well, I did mention that new technology we adopted, but also I'd say in crafting some of our security initiatives, I'd say trying to figure out what the optimal solution is for a client had proved difficult to us in the past. When we were first doing that gap analysis that I discussed, we created kind of a standard product that we thought we could offer to all of our clients. And what we found is that for some clients that was too complex, for some it wasn't complex enough, and there were a lot of in-betweens too. It was kind of like the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, except here there were 50 bears, and we were trying to serve the same porridge to all of them. So what we really determined was that that type of solution isn't relevant today. Companies are too different. They have different culture, they have different needs, different size, different budgets, and so we really partner. That's what we like to call ourselves, a partner with the company in understanding their business, understanding their goals, and in developing a solution that really works for them.
Excellent information, and that is just a perfect example of one size fits all does not work in business, especially when you're trying to protect your data within your business, your client's information, and the business overall. So one size does not fit all. A simple, plug-in or easy-to-fix solution is not what's needed. So once again, please reach out to a company, whether it's Jurinov or another company. Consult with them and make sure that you have what's in place for your own business and you're protected. Thank you very much for that, Eric. And now on to a more pleasant side is success. Could you share with our viewers an aha moment, a moment where you realized that something that you were doing was going to create great success, a happy moment, and something that you knew you were going to be able to excel?
Sure. Well, I mean, certainly, I get I get pleasure out of just knowing that we've made the environment more secure. You mentioned that whole internet sheriff thing. Knowing that each day we're helping to protect customer and client information. That goes a long way. But more specifically, I think back to that our culture discussion. And I know in the past we've been working with one client, and we'd helped develop some solutions for them, and do the strategy, implement some different controls within the organization, do some education, and it's kind of like an uphill battle when you begin sometimes if the culture's not there. But after a while, the employees, they grew more accustomed to it. They saw that the security changes were actually an improvement. They had seen some of the failures of competitors and others in the industry, and they could recognize, yeah, actually, we're doing a much better job here. And rather than see that resistance, the whole, I think the first time I ever told somebody there to, I think it was make a more complex password, they said, like, the hell with that, And months later, it was, I have an interesting idea, or I love the idea that you had. They were very receptive in it, and they were even generating their own ideas. We had much more collaboration rather than conflict, and they were actually becoming a security-oriented culture.
All right, so implementing a culture, creating a culture that surrounds whatever you do, the services you provide, and I can see where that would certainly be a great feeling when you first received resistance into the password, but then later on, a few months later, to realize that people are now taking your advice and they're making the longer passwords and they're happy and feel good about it. And sometimes people need a little time to make those decisions and changes. We all like to resist change, so that's wonderful information. Is there something you can share with us today, something that yourself or Jurinov as a company, or information that you could share that business owners could begin to implement into business today, something that's affected and needed in today's environment?
Well, yeah, I'll tell you, kind of one of my initiatives for this year has been to leverage more of some of the personal connections. The internet is a great resource. It is. We can find so much on the internet, but ultimately, that's a collection of computers, and a person is still much better. So I've actually encouraged everybody at Jurinov to develop networks, to know people who can help solve different problems that we might face, and also to be a resource for them, to give back to the community and to help others. So when we run into a problem, not only are you just Googling it, or Binging it, you're contacting people who will be able to bring you to the solution right away. And that kind of goes back to us. Can we be that partner for your company and be that resource when you need it?
Amazing insight, Eric. As technology evolves today, we see so many people who communicate only online, or on the phone will only text. So people are beginning to be shut off from society, and as a business, or an individual, create relationships, and that's amazing insight. And personal relationships and business relationships are, they should be the foundation of your life, and not a cyber persona. So wonderful insight. Now, would you also have a tip that you may be able to share with our viewers? Something that besides what you just shared there, some types of tips that they may be able to use, maybe related to security or technologies that they may be able to use and implement in their own businesses?
I guess there are a lot of them. You can keep in touch with my my Twitter feed or my Facebook, and I post a lot of updates there that'll be relevant and related to current events. There's a lot of information out there.
Okay, and would you be able to share your Twitter feed, with the audience? How would they contact you, or how would they find you? Would they simply search for your name, or what, is there a more pertinent method?
Well, yeah, there's a couple other Eric Vanderburgs out there. Now, you'll probably realize right away I'm not the poker player or the guy in the Netherlands, but it's just at E Vanderburg. So that's EVANDERBURG, and that's my Twitter. And then Facebook is I guess pages.facebook.com/EVanderburg.
All right, and I noticed on Google Plus that you share a lot of information daily in regards to some tips that people could use. So Twitter and Google Plus would both be great places where somebody may find you and be able to get information that you're posting consistently.
Certainly, I wish I was better at updating my Google Plus. It doesn't get the same treatment and care that my Twitter feed gets, but maybe that'll change soon.
All right, so look for Eric on Twitter, and he'll constantly be posting different updates, tips, strategies, techniques that you can use to protect your company, and advice that you may be able to link to other articles and read more about. So now one of the most exciting parts of the show here with the technology, the new gadgets. Is there a technical gadget, a tool, a software, or something that you just would not want to go out without today in your business or personal life?
Sure. Well, last year we started implementing a lot of new open source tools, and one of them was Alien Vault. Now, most of you have probably not heard of that software, but it's open source, it's free, and it is a security information and event monitoring system. So what it does is it actually collects data from my servers, my network devices, and brings it all together, analyzes it, and it can give me a dashboard and then a lot more detailed information on what kinds of threats are actually happening right now on my network. Now, I look at the dashboard regularly. That's really helpful for me, and I can see are there threats out there? If so, what categories do they fit in? Where's my traffic coming from around the world? And what kinds of traffic am I seeing? When I say traffic, I mean, is it like web connections? Do I have people trying to send me files? What kind of data are my own users within the company looking at? Are they pulling down a lot of videos or transferring data? And so that can help in determining whether something is going wrong, and also in identifying what the problem is very quickly. And again, that's completely free.
All right, amazing. I've never heard of Alien Vault before. I'll be looking at that myself, and free is certainly a price tag that will appeal to many people. A great place to start for anyone as far as the personal or business side. So thank you for that, Eric. We've enjoyed having you on the show here today. Would you have a book as well that you may be able to recommend? Something that you've read in the past, something our viewers may be interested in?
I read an awful lot, but I can say one book I really enjoyed was The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. That one was really a joy to read. It talks about what kind of critical mass is needed, or what makes an idea successful. And for security, that's important, because we'll say, how can we get people to adopt practices that will help keep them secure, and what kind of critical mass would we need there? What kind of critical mass do you need within your own organization to affect that kind of change?
Okay, thank you very much. So Eric, we've enjoyed having you on today. You provided a lot of valuable insight into cybersecurity, computer forensics, audits, how to protect a business, consulting within your business, building a culture within your business. A really great overview of how a business may look into securing all of their data, their files, and really the first step is just to reach out to a company such as Jurinov and get that consultation and just have a better understanding of what you may want to do as a company moving forward, and have that number in your Rolodex in the event that some type of breach happens, a question comes up, and that you know who to call, and you have, as Eric said, you've built a relationship. So thank you very much, and I'll let you say goodbye to our viewers, Eric, and then we'll be on to the next episode. So once again, here you go, Eric.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, we're here to help. So it's a pleasure being on the show with you, and thanks again.
All right, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us here today. Reach out to Jurinov, contact Eric online at Twitter, and follow the information that he's providing constantly every day, and really protect your investment, protect your business and your personal assets. Cybersecurity is a big threat that is in the online world today, and it's unfortunately something that we always have to be aware of. So thank you everyone for joining us here today, and we'll see you on the next episode.